Hey guys, Will here. So today we're going to be taking a look at this handy little gadget for your sim rig. So it's an 8-row by 8-row or 64 LED matrix that can be used to relay all kinds of useful information such as gear selection, shift light, flags, even a spotter as well. So lots of handy things that you can do with this. So this was sent to us by 3D Sim Gear. It's called the SimLED Module. And today we're going to be taking a detailed look and seeing whether it's something that we would recommend for you on your sim rig. And they very kindly hooked us up with an affiliate link as well for this. So if you guys do want to help support the channel and you decide that this is something that you would like to purchase for your rig, there's a link down in the description below that helps us out a little bit as well. So thank you very much for the support there, but let's get stuck into this guy now and see whether it's something that we would recommend. Okay, so as the name 3D Sim Gear suggests, this is a 3D printed piece of kit. And as you would expect for a 3D printed piece of gear, you know, the quality of fit and finish isn't fantastic. So you can see there where it's been peeled away from the bed. And, you know, it's just a typical kind of 3D printed quality. There's no sort of finishing that's gone into it. It hasn't been sort of melted back and, you know, painted or anything like that. And you can even see just inside where the LED cutouts are, there's a few little plastic burrs and bits and pieces in there. So I feel like they probably could have put a little bit more effort into just sort of finishing off the product, you know, just sort of getting rid of those burrs and things like that that take it from being, you know, something that feels kind of unfinished to something that is a nice product that you kind of feel proud to have front and center on your sim rig. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because this is likely to be something that's going to be kind of front and center on your sim rig. So it's something that you are going to be looking at every single time you jump in. And for me personally, I'd like to have a slightly higher quality finish on something that I'm going to be staring at all the time in my rig. But, you know, if that doesn't bother you, that's fine. It's something that just kind of, you know, irks me a little bit. But we can see here we've got two little plastic tabs here as well for mounting onto our aluminum profile rig or any other mounting solution that you can come up with. So those are big enough for M8 bolts. And what we're going to be doing is just mounting this directly onto our aluminum profile. I'll show you that in just a moment. And that's going to put it in a nice position where we'll be able to easily see it on our sim rig. Now, in terms of the enclosure itself, I believe internally here, it's just an Arduino board with the LED matrix. Unfortunately, I can't open it up and show you the internals because it is actually, looks like super glued shut. So they've kind of glued the enclosure together, which is fine, but it just means we can't pull it apart. And then really other than that, it's just the LEDs, the little tabs, the plastic enclosure, and then you can see down the bottom here as well, the little USB mini connection. So that plugs into a nice long 2-meter USB cable, A to USB mini, as you would expect, obviously. And that allows us to run all the way back to our PC or back to a USB hub. And, you know, plenty of length there. I was able to mount this pretty much anywhere I wanted on my rig with no problems at all. So it was nice that they included a nice long cable. So I don't think there's really much more to cover in terms of the hardware. Let's get into the software configuration and functionality now. Okay, so we just bolted this directly to the profile of our wheel deck just using two really short M8 bolts and two T-nuts. No mounting hardware included in the package though, so you will need some sort of a solution for yourselves depending on your rig. It makes sense they don't include anything because obviously the needs are going to depend, you know, entirely on what kind of rig you have, and it wouldn't make sense to sort of try and accommodate for everybody. But anyway, let's get into the configuration and software side of things now and have a look at the core functionality. So we're going to jump onto shop.3d-simgear.de, German company. We're going to scroll down here and you can see we have compatibility with a whole bunch of different games. So Assetto Corsa, Competizione, Automobilista 2, Dirt 2, Farming Simulator 19, the F1 games all the way from 2018 upwards, Project Cars 2, RFactor 2, iRacing, and more. So basically anything that's compatible with SimHub, which is the software that we're going to be actually using to drive this. So we'll scroll back up and click on Documents. We have an instruction manual, which I've already opened up, and then a default profile for importing into SimHub as well. Now I found with the more recent versions of SimHub, this wasn't necessary. Everything was just kind of working straight out of the box. But if you do need to do that, you can right click on this, go save link as, and that'll allow you to import it later. But we're going to go to the manual now. So I'll click over to this. And we've got the manual available in a bunch of different languages. We're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where we have our English manual. And in the introduction here, you can see there's a link to download the latest version of SimHub. So we're going to grab that. We're also going to click on the driver link too. That's going to take us through to the CH340 webpage from GoGotronics. And we're going to download the Windows CH340 driver from here as well. So once we've done that, we'll open up our downloads folder. We'll obviously get SimHub installed. Then we're going to right click on the install folder for the driver. We're going to go extract all. And we've actually already done this. You can see we've got another folder here. So we're going to open that up. We're going to run the setup file. And we're going to allow changes. And we get this little prompt here. We're going to click on install there. And it's as simple as that. That takes us through and installs the software. Once we're done, we can close it. And then we open up SimHub. So we've got SimHub up and running here now, and if you don't already have this piece of software, there are so many uses for this, from, you know, dashes to wind simulation. I mean, you name it, this software can do it. It really is an incredible piece of software. I've got it running my butt kicker as well, vibration systems. It's just a crazy piece of software, and it's free as well. There is a paid version. You can pay for a license which unlocks higher refresh rates, but for the context of what we're doing here, we actually don't need that. The free version works absolutely fine, but I would definitely recommend, you know, give him some support and pay for the full version. It's just a donationware type thing, so, you know, it only costs a couple of dollars, and it really is an amazing piece of software. So give him some support there. But what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the Arduino tab here, and we're going to click on My Hardware, and you can see this is already up and running and flashing. As soon as we open up SimHub, it just started working straight away for us. So we can see here it's showing up as a connected Arduino, and you can see here I've got a couple of other things running here too. So I've got my wind simulator rig, and then I've got the SimHub dashes, which aren't currently connected as well. So normally if you've only got the one device, it would show up under single, but because we're running multiple devices here, it's showing up under multiple. Now, you shouldn't need to configure anything else here at all. It all should just work straight out of the box, at least it did for us. So then we're going to click on RGB matrix on the tabs across the top here. And you can see we've got this funny pattern that's flashing on here at the moment. And this is a, I guess, orientation pattern. So what we can do is, depending on how we've mounted it on our rig, because you can imagine if we're using the two mounting tabs to mount on the side, that's going to change the orientation. So we can go portrait, and that's basically flipped upside down now. So you can see from the screen the way the pattern should be displaying. If we were to go landscape 90 degrees, you get the point. It's just rotating it around. So regardless of the orientation that you have this physically on your rig, it will work correctly in the software. So we're going to go back to portrait 180, which is how we've got it mounted. And then down here, you can see we've got a couple of different options. So we've got what the display does when the game's not running. So at the moment, we've got this test pattern running, and obviously you can configure this to be whatever you want. You can change it to your own, you know, league logo or your own YouTube channel logo or something like that. You know, it's completely up to you what you want to do here. But for now, we're going to just switch that animation off because we don't really need it. And then down here, we have when game running. So this is where the magic happens. So we've got our gear selection and a couple of options here. We've got flags, and then we've got our spotter overlay as well. So what I'm going to do is click on Open Test Data Editor. And this is going to allow us to just drag this little window up to where we can see it. So this is basically just allowing us to send some dummy data through to the display so we can use it for testing purposes here. So we're going to scroll down here. We can see RPM red line matched or red line reached, and you can see here it's blinking red. So that's basically like a shift light. So when we get to the top of the RPM range, obviously defined in SimHub as well, so you can adjust this per car. Some cars will obviously be different. I find SimHub does a pretty good job of detecting automatically and adjusting, but you may need to configure it depending on the car that you're driving. So that is what we see on the little display when we get to the top of a gear. And obviously if we change the gears here as well, it goes through the various different numbers. So we'll turn off the red line again now. And you get the idea here. We can go through all the gears all the way up to, I think it goes up to 20. Yeah, so if you're doing truck simulation, you shouldn't have any problems there getting all the gears that you have available in a truck as well. Now, we'll just quickly run through fonts as well, because we can change fonts here. You can see at the moment we've got thick selected. We can change it to pixel, nice and small, even smaller still. I don't know why you want to use any of these other ones, but you have the option if you do. I think the thick one is the easiest to kind of read at a glance, because the benefit of this really is, you know, having it in your peripheral vision, as we'll talk about in just a minute. But we'll go back to thick hollow there. We've got thick, trad large, and, or traditional, I guess that is, and then traditional. But let's set it back to thick solid at the moment. And then if we scroll down in our test data to flags, we've got black flag. So it's just a border to kind of show us that we've got a black flag. We've got a white flag. We've got a green flag, a yellow flag as well, and that's blinking for us to make sure it grabs our attention. And then if we switch that one off, we've got a blue flag too, which again blinks at us to let us know that somebody is getting frustrated behind us wanting to overtake. And then lastly, we have a visual spotter as well. So if we click on car left, we get a bracket on the left-hand side to indicate that there's a car present on our left-hand side. And you guessed it, if we click on right, we get the same thing on the right as well. And that importantly works on any game that outputs telemetry data which SimHub can interpret. So even if the game doesn't have a native spotter, basically if it works with Crew Chief, it'll work with this as well, which is pretty cool. So we'll test that out and see how useful it is compared to Crew Chief a little bit later on too. And that is it in terms of the basic functionality. There's a couple of things you can tweak here and adjust. You can adjust the position on the screen as well, should you wish to do so for some reason. So say, for example, we're using one of the smaller fonts. We can then move that around on the screen to suit some, you know, whatever configuration you want. But we're just going to leave that on 1:1 for now. Go back to thick. And then importantly, up the top here as well, we do have a brightness adjustment from quite dim down at 1%, which is actually probably about where I would want it. Now, it does have a warning if we go under 4% brightness that the colors may not be reproduced accurately, but we can go basically all the way from 1 to thermonuclear here. That is absolutely insanely bright. Anywhere above about, well, the difference between 20% and 100% isn't huge, but yeah, anything above about probably 10% I think is too bright to have directly in front of you. Now, as we said before, it is kind of useful to have this in your peripheral vision. When the flag's going particularly, you can kind of be driving and sort of just see it there and see the color without having to sort of take your eyes off the road. But yeah, for me, I think probably somewhere between 4 and 10%, depending on the ambient lighting, is probably going to be more than enough. So I'm just going to leave it on 4 for now. And I think that's pretty much everything that we need to cover in terms of functionality here. There is the option to add effects as well, so you can create your own custom effects should you wish to do so. But I think in terms of core functionality, everything that we need is just kind of there straight out of the box. So really from there, the only other things you might want to do is just customize color selections and things like that. So say, for example, you want your gear to be yellow instead of blue or something like that, you can change all of that through the palette here. And then a red line, I can't think of any reason why you'd want your red line to be anything other than red, but you can if you want to. We can also enable or disable the blinking for the red line as well, should we wish to do so. So let's jump into a car now and let's go for a drive. All right, let's get underway here. Oh, bad launch. So we've got the green light, that's showing up. There's my gears. Oops, on the brakes. Okay, so our spotter's working there as well, I can see. I don't have any other audio spotter running at all, so I'm just relying purely on that for now. So I have done a bit of driving with this already, just to sort of get a feel for it, and I guess really determine where its value is, if any, over what you can already have on the screen. Because I'm sure what a lot of people will be thinking was, you know, like that's cool and everything, but can't you already see all this information on the screen anyway? In this particular car, we do have a pretty big gear selection showing up there already. So kind of redundant in that sense, but there are a lot of cars as well, like Skip Barber, for example, comes to mind, where you really have no idea what gear you're in unless you're using an H-pattern shifter or something like that. And that car actually does have a sequential gearbox. So it is actually really useful for cars where you can't necessarily see what gear you're in, you know, just off the top of your head there. And I could see there quite clearly, as I moved ahead, I could see when I was clear and I was able to move back across the track. So very helpful in that regard. And I think really where it comes into its own is, as I was saying before, because it's nice and bright, even at lower brightness settings, you are kind of aware of it in your peripheral vision at all times. So what happens is you don't have to take your eyes off the road to actually see the information that it's trying to communicate to you. Now, that's not quite so much the case with the gear selection, because all you sort of see is a bright light in your face the entire time. And what might actually be cool is if you're able to set different colors for different gears, for example, so you just sort of see the color and know from the color what gear you're in. But in terms of the spotter and flags and everything, it really is very useful, because you can kind of you can see what's going on in your peripheral vision without having to take your eyes off the road. So I'd say I probably don't prefer it over an audio spotter. I think I do still prefer Crew Chief. Obviously it has a lot of other functionality too, like it tells you fuel calculations and, you know, lap times and all sorts of other things that this doesn't give you. But if you're more a visual person, or you don't want to have that extra audio information, or maybe you're streaming or something like that, and you don't want to have all that extra audio on your stream, then this is really, really useful. Now, just on the subject of streaming as well, I know a couple of other streamers, so Matt Malone, for example, and I think Dave Cam uses a similar device to this as well. And it's actually quite cool for streaming, because it's a way that you can actually have up on the corner of your screen for your viewers to sort of see what's going on as well, if there's any flags or something happening. So that's quite cool as well. All right, so I've got the pack catching up behind me now. I just wanted to sort of trigger a blue flag scenario here so you guys could see as well. So I'm gonna slow down a little bit and they should come into range. There they go. Okay, yep, so I saw that straight away, and I think the important thing here is, even though I do have the indicator on my screen that tells me that I've got a blue flag, and obviously the position and prominence of that does depend on the game that you're playing, but I can tell you that having that bright kind of light in my face straight away was a lot more noticeable than having those other blue flags in the game. More so than any game that I've played in any position that I could put it other than directly in the middle of my field of view as well. So definitely useful in that regard too. Let's slow down a little bit more, let them catch up. And yeah, again, like as soon as that triggers, I notice it immediately regardless of its position. Really, what it boils down to for me is this. It's not giving you any information that you couldn't get by other means. So you could use an audio spotter if you wanted to for free as well. You could just have your overlays inside the game closer to, closer to the middle of the screen where you're not going to miss them. So there's plenty of ways that you can get this functionality, in other means that are free. But I really do like the fact that, it's bright, it's vibrant, it's right in your face so you don't miss it. You don't have to take your eyes off the road to notice it either. And I just think it's one of those little tools that can add a little bit of extra, not necessarily immersion, but a little bit of extra value to the overall experience. And not to mention as well that, if you're streaming and you want to have it on the edge of your screen on your camera or something like that, so your audience can kind of see what's going on a little bit clearer as well, I think there's definitely value in it for that as well. So there you go, guys. That is the SimLED module from 3D Sim Gear. So if you want to pick one of these up, as we said before, there is a link down in the description below, which helps out the channel as well. But I hope that you guys have found this quick review interesting and useful. If you have, as always, please leave a thumbs up. Make sure you check out our 100,000 subscriber giveaway as well, where we're giving away a $3,500 US sim rig. It's pretty crazy. So check that out as well. Link down in the description. And thank you very much for watching, guys, as always. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.